Alright, quick shout out before we start today's video. On the last video, I asked you to find the hidden word in the video, and the word was Susanoo, and Draco Gaming found that one. If you find the hidden word on today's video, I'll definitely mention you in the next video, and let's jump straight into it. Alright, so I know a lot of people have some very strong opinions on this type of topic, so starting off with some honorable mentions, I would like to put Orochimaru, Kakashi, Sakura, and most of the current Kage into this category. Starting off with Orochimaru, we can at the very least establish how much of a threat Orochimaru can pose, being very prevalent throughout the Shippuden franchise. Even assuming that he got slightly stronger, it's kind of difficult to determine with certainty how powerful he is, and that kind of prevents him from taking an official ranking on this list. Kakashi, we know Kakashi is quite a bit more powerful than he was in the War Arc by using some feats that he has in the Kakashi Hiden novels, but he's still nowhere as strong as he actually was with the DMS amp that he had, which is the power necessary to actually compete with some of the Otsutskis and people later on this list. Sakura is also an honorable mention here. As many of us are aware, she's a very powerful character in the show, but she doesn't really have too many impressive showings of power, especially in Boruto, but we could try to use some relative power scaling using previous feats that she's had, but with new plots comes more powerful foes, and her power scaling doesn't really bring her up to this level. And obviously we have most of the current Kage. I feel like this is pretty self-explanatory. Being a Kage level opponent, it's pretty clear that they're amongst the most powerful in the franchise in their own respective villages, along with the previous Kage, but their feats are little to none, and the few feats that they do have in Boruto kind of scale them below most of the other people on this list. Starting off with number 10, we have Gaara. Now, Gaara is one of the current Kage, and the reason why he wasn't included with the honorable mentions is that because he does have a couple of feats that does scale him a little bit higher. Now, first of all, we know that he was amongst the most powerful people in Konoha during the time of Momoshiki's attack, because they only decided to take the best and most powerful crew that they had with him at the time, and that included Gaara as well as the other Kage. But during the fight, he is able to momentarily stop Momoshiki, transform Momoshiki in his tracks before he is ultimately overpowered like the other Kage. Now, this is actually way more than anybody else could do at that moment in time, which gives him a solid spot at number 10 above the other Kage as well. Now, moving to number 9, we have Delta. Now, originally I speculated that she would be below Sakura, but like many of these placings are, that opinion is actually subject to change. Now, the biggest issue that I had with her was that her biggest feat wasn't really too much of a feat at all. She was able to fight against 6-pass stage mode Naruto, and at one point he even stated that he was going all out as well, but throughout the fight it's kind of clear that Naruto was holding back, and during the duration of the fight, it's also clear that he did have the edge, but not many people can contest with this sort of power, and that's why she's placed on the number 9 spot on this list. Moving on to number 8, we have Kashin Koji. Now, as many of us already know, Kashin Koji is a perfected clone of Jiraiya, who maintains all of Jiraiya's original abilities, which are enhanced, and he has perfect sage mode. His original intent was actually to eliminate the threat of Ishiki Otsutsuki, which is much more than anyone else can hope of accomplishing, seeing how exponentially more powerful he is than anyone else below him on this list. Now, for the little amount of actual substantial fighting we see him have, it seems like he actually deserves this spot, right? He was able to contest with Jigen, which was able to easily defeat Naruto and Sasuke. Now, do keep in mind, these were under very strict and calculated circumstances, which is why he did so well, but we do see him trade blows, and ultimately, he's clever enough to kill Ishiki Otsutsuki's vessel with some pure flames that he summoned, resulting in him in using his true body. Now, kind of when comparing him to Delta, the simplest way I like to put it is that he did better against the stronger opponent. Now, number 7, we got Urashiki. Now, Urashiki has pretty much only been seen in the anime, but we all knew that the Otsutsuki clan would eventually make their way onto this list, which is why he's at number 7. Now, being part of the Otsutsuki clan, he's automatically considered to be an extremely formidable threat, and he's got his own variation of the 6-to-more Sharingan, which allows him to go back in time. He also has a Byakugan, which does give him the 360 field of vision, and he has a Chakra Rod, which allows him to steal people's chakras in a blink of an eye compared to the slower nature and other methods of extraction, such as the base Rinnegan's chakra extraction. Now, he can also petrify people with his Palace of the Dragon King ability, which was utilized on Toneri, and he's more of like a hacks type character, right? He's very sneaky. He doesn't like to take head-on altercations. He just likes to be sneaky and steal people's chakra, and he has shown to be able to compete with multiple Kage level opponents without too much of an issue, which is the reason why he's on the list. But he did lose to a Kid Boruto, Kid Naruto, base Jiraiya, Jiraiya, and a Sasuke, which only had chakra given to him by a kid Sakura, and they were all able to defeat him whilst in his transformed state. Now this puts his durability much lower, which is why he is lower than the other Otsutsukis on this list. Now moving on to number 6, we have Kinshiki. Now we're starting to kind of get into the heavy hitters. Kinshiki along with Momoshiki are seen as threats greater than Kaguya, which should already put him above anyone around or weaker than the feats demonstrated in the war arc. He himself doesn't really have a ton of feats, but we do know that he did have a brief tussle with Sasuke. He was able to withstand the Chidori and simultaneous attacks from the current Kage. And one of the databook scans even mentions that Kinshiki has the power to split worlds. Now make of that as you will, but in my opinion he has a solid placing at number 6. Now moving on to number 5, we have Momoshiki. Now Momoshiki's power is quite obvious once you start observing some of his feats. First of all, much like other Otsutskis, he has the Byakugan. He also has some Rinegans on his palms which allow him to absorb ninjutsu and release them with multiple times the original power. In his base, he and Kinshiki were compared to threats greater than Kaguya, right? After he's transformed, he gets exponentially more powerful. Also in his base, he was able to keep up with all the other Kage, including Sasuke, and like I said, once he absorbs Kinshiki, literally the only people who can compete with him are Naruto and Sasuke, as all the other Kage are just out cold. Now if you want to kind of expand his range of feats, you could take a look at Boroshiki, who is speculatively a percentage of Momo's power, as the Osutsukification is not quite complete, and Boroshiki is easily able to take out some powerful Kara inners such as Boro, and is fast enough to stab out Sasuke's Rinnegan. And that brings us to number 4, Sasuke, right? Now we all knew Sasuke would make it to this list eventually, and narratively speaking, he and Naruto always seem to be relative to one another for the most part, especially now more than ever. It's heavily implied, and they're now able to dwarf any other foe seen in Shippuden. Now if you want to assume that Momoshiki is above him, that's up to you, but we do know that him and Naruto were not necessarily using their full potential, as Naruto was heavily drained of chakra during the fight with Momo due to some chakra absorption, and Sasuke was competing on the same level as that weakened Naruto. Also, if we compare this fight with the fight against Jigen, it becomes pretty clear that they weren't really necessarily going all out, as Sasuke didn't use many abilities that were accessible to him, and the fight ultimately ended with Naruto letting his 12-year-old kid finish off Momoshiki, because that's how much of a threat they thought the transformed Momoshiki was. And we obviously know that he's on this insane level of power, this insane scale, because of the fact that he was able to keep up with Momo, Kinshiki, defeated Urashiki with a Kirin easily, with essentially no chakra, and briefly kept up with Jigen alongside Naruto, who's much more powerful than Momoshiki. Number 3, this one might take some people off guard, because some people forget that Code is actually more powerful than Jigen, right? So let me backtrack a little bit here. In the manga, Amato stated that Code was so powerful that he needed to have limiters placed on his body because his capabilities surpassed those of Jigen, and obviously you don't want to undermine the abilities of the leader. Now, the only reason why he was not disposed of like some other cyborgs is because of his loyalty, because of how loyal he was. Obviously, we know that Jigen was able to easily defeat Naruto and Sasuke with not much more than a chip on his abdomen due to some straining on his imperfect vessel. It's kind of unclear what other abilities lead him to have this sort of power, or how the limiters will be removed. It's speculation that a lot of his power probably comes from his mastery of his white Kamra that he has, which I also have a video on if you want to go check that out. Also, before we get on to number 2, I just wanted to mention that there are some other cyborgs, including Ida and Daemon. It was mentioned that some cyborgs were disposed of because of their threat to Jigen's power, much like Code, and some of these we see that were not actually disposed of are Ida and Daemon, but the only issue with them is that we haven't really seen them too much in action, and they specifically have not been stated to be more powerful than Jigen, and if they were, then it wouldn't make sense for Ida to be a cyborg who is not actually powerful. Ida is actually stated to not be a fighter, so it's very speculative at this point how powerful they are and if they would make the list. I just thought it'd be worthy to mention them as well. That brings us to number 2, Ishiki Otsutsuki. Now, this one comes with no surprises, as Ishiki with an imperfect vessel, like previously stated, was stronger than Naruto and Sasuke, was able to defeat them with ease, and is stronger than any of the other inners of Kara, just base Jigen, right? Not even Karma Seal Jigen, not even Ishiki Otsutsuki, base Jigen was on this scale of power. Now, his full body was implied to be way more powerful than anything we've seen before. He has access to his own dojutsu, which allows him to shrink essentially anything that's inorganic and keep it in his own pocket dimension, kind of reminiscent of the Kamui ability that we see in Shippuden. Even Kashin Koji, who was specifically designed to combat this monster, didn't even attempt to take a shot at Ishiki Otsutsuki's full power. Now, there are many people that try to kind of undermine his capabilities and state that he's below Kaguya because she was able to severely damage his body, but that was just a super unexpected assault on Ishiki that he still survived, and realistically, if you actually try scaling, you can see that he's exponentially more powerful and higher on the list than anyone else we see in Shippuden. That brings us to number 1. The highest person on the list is Shikamaru. With his expert chess skills, we see... Hold up. No, that's the wrong list, sorry. Baryon mode Naruto. Now, Naruto with his 6 fast stage mode would have been alongside Sasuke on this list, but Kurama did reveal an ace up their sleeve in one of the more recent chapters of the Boruto anime. Now, combining Kurama's and Naruto's chakras via an ability similar to nuclear fusion, Naruto is able to access the power of Baryon mode, which is stated to be more powerful than Ishiki Otsutsuki himself. It even drains the life force of anyone you face during the fight because all chakras are connected, and the biggest downside of this ability is that you also drain your own life force and chakra, leaving you fully depleted afterwards, and also kills the QB that you are in possession of. Now, the process should only be used during a worst case scenario, and unfortunately Naruto had to use this ability and he lost Kurama, but it seems it was needed for the plot to move forward and for people to take their eyes off of Naruto and focus on the new protagonist, and that is Boruto. Now, if you guys like more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to join the Discord down below. Let me know if I missed anything, and like I said, a lot of these lists are subject to change, so take this list with a grain of salt. If you have another list, definitely let me know below, as I'm always looking at the comments. I'll catch you in the next one.